welcome to Format. I'm Sven Harley.
And I'm David Sibilia.
And tonight we're looking at a couple of machines from Commodore. The first of which is the Commodore Dynamic Total Vision, or as most people refer to it, the CDTV. Here we have the original CDTV. There was supposed to be a second version of it which never actually turned up. And it was sold initially by Commodore, very much pushing their own name rather than mentioning anything to do with the Amiga.
Yeah, which was weird, but that wasn't the weirdest thing about this machine.
No.
I remember at the time thinking it was like a joke.
Yeah.
That they told the retailers to put it in the hi-fi section.
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of see some logic in it, but to go, no, don't put it with the computer games, put it with the stereos and the TVs, because that's going to sell it. It makes no sense to me.
The biggest problem with it, really, was the fact that Commodore had this whole thing about it had to be sold in a way that wouldn't be attractive to people who normally would go for a computer. It was to try and open the market up and go for people who were after a home electronics appliance.
People who would have gone for a CD player that could also do.
Yeah, something else. Now this could do CD and graphics and CD and MIDI as well, which was fair enough, neither of which took off. Anyway.
One of the problems was, because this predated the CDI, PlayStation, everything like that,
yeah.
it was literally the very first gen of consoles. They didn't have to market it.
No, they hadn't a clue. And the other big problem with it is that what they wanted to do with it wasn't actually technically possible for another 10 years afterwards. Because once DVDs had come, once DVDs were kicking around, then this concept would have flown
straight off the shelf.
But with all respect to them, with the technology that was available at the time, this was never going to work in the way they wanted it to work.
No.
I mean, full motion video was another year or so off, even on the CDI, and that would have helped it an awful lot. But with video CDs, which is what would the type of graphics that would play back on it, not being massively different to VHS, I don't think people really would have latched onto it. And indeed, video CD didn't really take off over in the West.
You see, I've got slightly a different take on it, because as you know, I'm massively into laserdiscs. Even today, I still pick them up from time to time, especially the Japanese ones. And I thought that what we were going to end up with was laserdisc quality on CDs. I thought that was where they were going.
It kind of doesn't help that there were CD videos running around, weren't they? Not video CDs, but CD videos.
Terrible things.
But they were essentially laserdisc quality on a CD-sized disc. The only problem is they were about 12 minutes or something, weren't they? So they were great for music videos, but that was about it.
Yeah, pop videos.
Yeah.
Anything else? Board of Education did experiment with doing some bits with them, but they were just too expensive.
Not enough data as well. Because at the end of the day, it was analogue data as well, so it was really quite strange. But back to the CDTV. This was essentially an Amiga 500 inside.
Yeah, I was surprised by the spec on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just an A500 with the 1 meg upgrade in a different box with a CD drive. I mean, obviously the motherboard's completely different, but it's the same technology.
Yeah.
It has a wonderful array of ports on the back, because you can plug a keyboard in, you can plug in, it's got MIDI ports built in, which was the only Amiga ever to have MIDI ports built in, I think, if I remember rightly. It was the first ever Amiga-based piece of technology that had a composite video out in colour rather than black and white. And then you've got a full set of Amiga ports as well as that. So, you know, it was quite a piece of technology. I mean, it's reasonably well built as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a chunky piece of kit. It's nicely built.
Well, the fact that you still use it and port it around places proves.
Exactly. I mean, this was under the counter at EB for several years doing music, because it was the best CD player we had in place. So, you know, and there was a decent amount of software for it. I mean, this piece here, the timetable of history, shows the kind of ideas they had with it, because it was supposed to be, you'd get encyclopedias and so on and so forth, and it ended up just being somewhere you bought different games that didn't work on in a different medium. The Sherlock Holmes game here, for instance, if that had been on floppy disk, it would have been Lord knows how many. Is that on 2 Mega Blast? This is basically the same as the normal Amiga version, but with the CDs completely full of music. and has a little bit of encyclopedic information about the record company, which is bizarre. And Lemmings, of course, this came out on everything under the sun at the time and everything since. This actually had a rolling demo of something called PlanetSide, which is basically something that slowly turned into what ended up being Microcosm. But it was this that grabbed Sony's attention, because of course by the time Microcosm came out, Sony Entertainment Publishing had, Sony Electronic Publishing had bought Psygnosis, and were already getting them ready to do a PlayStation product. So you know, it's quite interesting, because this is the thing, is Commodore really had a lot to do with Psygnosis when this was developed, and a lot of that information ended up being part of Sony.
I think one of the things that I know you're going to go on about the architecture and how wonderful the technologies, and I know you're going to go through all those things, but this was the bit that always caught my attention.
Yeah. Caddy.
What a great way and yet nobody else did it.
Well, this was the thing, is that was supposed to protect the discs. Yeah. But if you let a speck of dust in that,
it scratches.
It scratches the disc because they're spinning so quick. And this is the thing, is that early CD-ROM drives actually had, PC CD-ROM drives for a year or two had those, didn't they? And eventually we ended up with the normal CD trays and the top loaders and stuff like that. But this is where everything started. So it's no real surprise. But yes, 68,000 processor, 7 megahertz, 1 gig or meg of RAM.
Gig, really? Yeah. Can you imagine what this could have done within a day?
Absolutely, or a hard drive even. And it was even modular. There's a graphics slot and expansion slot. You could put a Genlock in this internally, which was pretty cool. So you could overlay stuff onto live video feeding through, which would have been great, especially because it's got an input and output for the TV as well. So, it had an awful lot of potential, and virtually none of it was realised in any way, shape or form. Now, of course, if they'd done this at the end of 1998, 1999 using a DVD drive and some bigger hardware, everybody would have one. But by that point, everybody had given up on the idea. It's a massive shame.
Well, it's one of those things. It was such a great idea, but it was really before its time.
Yeah, and it killed the idea dead, unfortunately.
Yeah, quite literally.
So, what we'll do is we'll come back in a minute with the other one. And welcome back. Now, you'll notice things have changed. We move on a couple of years to September 1993, and the release, actually, to be fair, it accidentally got released in August in Rumbelows, but it was supposed to be out in September 1993.
So I was just curious what the last game I played was, because it's still in the disc.
Project X and Ultimate Body Blows, yes.
Yeah, Project X.
Project X required. Look what I've got here. Alien Breed Special Edition.
Oh yeah, that'd be the one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is the machine that was released in 1993. Mine is a later model than yours, slightly, because this is my second one, because my first one broke.
Yeah, this is actually my second one.
Yeah.
My first one is still intact, actually, funnily enough, but it is in the attic, and I was having a gaming night, and I really wanted people to play, and I didn't want to go digging around. So I called a friend of mine up who happens to sell them and said, I need one. And luckily, door-to-door service, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the difference being is that this hasn't got a ridge on the back here.
Yes!
Which means it's going to be a little bit susceptible to
a little bit susceptible.
Yes.
It means that if I play it for say 150 hours or so, I'm going to need to put the book on
top of it. Yes. Now this is one of the design flaws in it. It's basically the hinge at the back warps.
But it does go to show you that they listened to the people at the time and went, we didn't realise people were going to sit down for hours at a time playing it.
So they reinforced the
hinge point.
Quite cool.
Yeah.
But looking around the machine, it screams what it is, 32-bit. Commodore were very vocal about calling it the first ever 32-bit machine in the world. At which point everybody goes, no, what about the FM towns in Japan? Wasn't 32-bit.
Wasn't 32-bit?
A lot of people say, but it was 32-bit. No, it wasn't.
It was 32-bit in the same way that the Lynx was
16-bit, yeah. I mean, this is the thing, is that the FM towns actually had a processor that was 16-bit internally and 32-bit externally, which is the opposite way around to everything else. So, for instance, the processor in the CDTV and the Amiga 500 was the 68000, which has 32-bit internal registers, but was connected to the rest of the world through 16-bit data bus. So, it was 32-bit internally, 16-bit externally. Just to be really confusing though, the processor inside the CD32 is technically 32-bit, but it only actually works in 24 bits externally until you've got some fast RAM.
Yes.
Which is
good
just
old
like,
fast RAM.
And considering it shipped with 2 meg of chip RAM and no fast RAM was a bit annoying, to say the least.
Now, some people are going to notice that my one, ta-da, nice and slim and got the smooth finish on the back. Well, you also got that kind of chunky thing. I don't know why you bothered with that.
What was this?
So, yeah, I mean, it couldn't have been any good. If it was any good, they'd have made more than a couple of hundred.
Yes.
Not that I wouldn't quite like one in my collection.
Not
Not
at all. Yes, the full motion video module, which finally turned up at retail just as Commodore went bump.
Yeah.
So there ended up being quite a lot of these sitting in the Filipino warehouse that then ended up degrading to the point where they were unusable.
Yeah.
Which was a massive shame.
Sacrilege is what it is.
With a load of CD32s, which all became junk.
Yeah, again,
So
just wrong. Do you want to tell the boys and girls at home what that particular gadget actually does?
Yeah, this is as it says, full motion video module. What this basically allowed you to do was play video CDs.
Yeah.
Which they were expecting to take off, which then didn't.
As we covered in the earlier section, it's one of those technologies that was such a good idea, but
yeah. One of the cool things about the CD32 way of doing it though was that unlike PCs at the time, it totally took all of the function off the processor, the main CPU. So it just ran in parallel and just kept running the video regardless of what you were doing. The cool thing was on the CD32 is you could do it so that colour 0 on the normal Amiga screen, so say if you had Deluxe Paint running on the CD32,
you could paint on top.
You could paint on top. It was so cool. Looking around the machine, you've got 2 joypad ports, a keyboard port, which was actually used for serial networking as well, and then you have your usual power and then TV ports of various types in your audio outs. So yeah, this was pretty cool. Basically inside it was essentially a cut down A1200. Still had all the technology from the Amiga 1200 in a slightly smaller form factor motherboard, and it had one extra chip which was called a Kiko, which essentially was, the idea was to try and keep up with the PC. The Kiko chip could take the planar type graphics from normal Amiga stuff and convert it into chunky, so it could chuck it around the screen faster.
Yeah.
Hardly anybody used it, because there was no programming code and no includes and no information from Commodore on how to use it properly, which is a massive shame. And it also, some of the versions of the original box, they actually called it Buster instead of a Kiko, which is a completely different chip that wasn't even on the board, which is in A4000s and things like that. So, yeah.
The thing was, for the time, not only was it clever, but the design was good. There was only one thing, and it amazes me that they released it with it in. There's only one design flaw, other than the fact that the overheat messes the back hinge.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a lot of gameplay to do. Why on earth did they put the power switch at the back?
I know, it's quite bizarre. Reset buttons here.
Yeah, resetting right at the front. Volume, which... Why did they give it a volume?
The headphones.
The headphones!
Yeah.
which just proves to show
Yeah.
they were thinking out of the box a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then they're going to set the power switch at the back.
Yeah. It was quite bizarre. What's interesting actually is the fact that that's actually the power switch out of the Commodore 64. And it's also the power connector out of the Commodore 64.
I didn't... Oh yes, yeah, I knew the power connector was...
Yeah, because if you look at the bottom of the majority of power supplies, it says C65 on it, because they were originally made for the Commodore 65 machine, which never got released.
Never got released.
And there was just some prototypes running around. Now,
have you ever actually seen one of the prototypes?
Yes. It looks like an Amiga. It's really weird. It's like a Commodore 64 with a built-in disk drive on the side, but it was actually facing forward instead of facing to the side. So it was like, okay.
Now again, I like the idea.
Yeah. Well, it's like the A1000, wasn't it, with the keyboard case?
Yes.
Why couldn't every computer ever have one of those? That just makes so much sense. Well, desktops anyway.
Yeah.
So yes, it was basically released in 1993, ready for the Christmas run. In the UK. It came out in a couple of other territories as time went on.
Yeah.
Like Canada. Never got released in the USA officially because there was a patent problem and Commodore were actually up against a court order about that.
Really ironically, one of the companies that I bought my comics from back then sent me, I love this, a British supplier was supplying them.
Yeah.
And they were supplying everybody else, and they put a flyer in my comics to say that they were supplying it. So a British supplier sent the flyers to America. The flyer got put in with my comic order and then sent back to me to see if I wanted one. And he lived about 20 minutes on the road from me. I just love that. I was like,
it's crazy, isn't it?
ooh, it's a small world.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the big drawbacks with this, ironically, was the fact it was based on Amiga technology. Because software houses got very lazy, and when they realised that all they needed was the bootstrap code to put on the CD, and they could basically put virtually any Amiga game on that CD and it would work, really did for it as far as software that really would work, use the most of the machine. We'll have a look at these for an example. I've only grabbed a few things, just the CD size stuff, because
I'm
all
glad,
the big box stuff is...
Geez, your collection is massive.
Yeah, I have a lot. I mean, I haven't brought any Psygnosis products other than Lemmings, because that will work on it for a start. So they actually re-released that in a big box.
Yes.
This CD in a big box with CDTV and CD32 in on the front, but it was a normal Lemmings box. So it was actually an Amiga box with a sticker over it saying it's for the CD32 and CDTV. Zone 2 kind of works on it. It glitches a little bit on some of the motion screens, but the game itself is fine. And I haven't come across a video CD that won't work on it, which is quite cool. But let's have a look at these for a moment. Pirate's Gold.
My favourite. Oh God, it's the amount of my youth I wasted on that game.
Brilliant game. I love this, and I was playing Assassin's Creed 4 yesterday on a PS4. Oh my God, did they steal some ideas from this game?
No. They rebooted or reimagined or any one of the other words that we use rather than...
Let's go to a tavern to enlist our pirates, etc., etc. So yes, this
cannon fighting scenes.
Yeah.
That were the...
That's brilliant. So that is actually an AGA title, so it's basically what they did with that is they took the original pirates off the A500, upgraded the graphics to be using the new chipset in here. It was also in the 1200 and 4000, and it's got CD audio and cutscenes on CD. So fair enough, that makes sense. That was a perfectly good title.
And a nice piece of packaging as well for the time.
Yeah. Disposable Hero. That is essentially the A1200 version of the game with CD audio. No real difference gameplay wise, but you know, at least they got CD audio on it. Fair enough. That's decent enough. Alien Breed and Quack. There was a reason this was a 2-pack for only 15 quid. Because they're exactly the same as the floppy versions.
But what's actually funny is, have you actually ever popped that open and had a look at the amount of data on the back of the disc?
Yeah, it's probably virtually nothing, isn't it? Yeah, it's barely visible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, to be fair...
They run perfectly well.
And they're brilliant games.
Yeah, they're great games.
I mean, to give you an idea how
it should have been part of a bigger multi-pack. They could have put at least 4 more games.
But at least they didn't take the mick. And there were plenty of games where even though they were supposed to be CD32 specific, they hadn't even used a button for jump. You were having to go up on the pad.
Up on the pads.
Because they hadn't changed the control method in any way, shape or form, which was just
I'm amazed that you still have these. Not that you have spare controllers, that doesn't surprise me. It's the fact that it's the original packaging.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that this was how they packaged it.
Yeah.
Because I'm so used to today where you get everything in a big bubble pack.
Yes, quite.
I'd forgotten they just stuck them in bags.
Well, this is the thing. Everything to do with the CDTV, the CD32, to be honest, was pretty much done on the cheap by Commodore. I mean, this casing is reasonably cheaply made. To be fair, the packaging was cheap. This was produced as cheap as possible because Commodore was simply running out of money, and this was the last chance.
Yeah. And it really should have saved the company. It should have saved the company.
Yeah, absolutely. But it did really well in the UK.
Yeah.
They sold tons to start with. And it actually had over 50% of the CD-ROM market in this country.
Price was so good on it.
Yeah. But then...
Big Christmas release.
Yeah.
Cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this came out at $299.99, which, you know...
For the time period and the technology involved...
Yeah, because the closest competitor was the Mega CD, and it was almost that much for just the Mega CD. You have to have a Mega Drive as well to plug onto it. So...
Although, to be absolutely fair, that's something we should do a format about at a later date, just because... What a great idea that was!
Oh, yeah. But
not a patch. Not a patch.
But between that and the 32X, they basically killed any ideas of having add-ons for consoles from that point onwards.
Yeah.
You know, as proved out by the Kinect. Let alone anything else. And PlayStation Move and the Kinect did not get the traction they deserved to get.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you were saying about shovelware. But that's one of the things that today's gamers complain about.
Yeah.
Oh, this new console isn't backwards compatible with all the games I had for my previous console.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of to stop people just mass producing the games.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, to be honest, with the current two consoles, there was no way they could do backwards.
No, because the architecture type.
However, interestingly, it looks like Sony are actually going to do emulation on PS4, so you can play PlayStation 1 and 2 games.
Oh, we just found a reason for me to buy a PS4.
Absolutely.
No, there's a number of PS1 titles that I really genuinely enjoy.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get rid of mine, to be honest.
Yeah.
The PS1, it never worked. I don't like the design.
Really?
Never liked.
Have you ever had one of the little ones?
Yeah, it's still just... It's never worked for me. I like the games.
Yeah.
Not particularly fond of the controller, not particularly fond of the technology. Just as a thing.
There's an excuse to have a Vita and play them on the move. Yeah, absolutely. But going back to the CD32 for a second, there were some very interesting things that happened in development of this. I mean, the controller looks weird. It's
a very strange shape.
But when you use it, you suddenly think, hold on, now it makes sense.
Yeah. But when you consider the controllers we were using back then, it's very foreign. Yes,
and interestingly, this was the biggest selling third-party pad, which most people preferred. It might have had something to do with the fact it had turbo fire built into it.
Turbo fire helps.
And it's actually really quite nice, but these go for silly money now.
Yeah, because you can't get them. It amazes me, considering the technology that's in these controllers, that they fail.
Yeah.
Because they really shouldn't. You're looking at going, why does this fail? Cheaply made.
Cheaply made. I mean, that's a leaf switch that's broken in there. So.
But they're still going.
Yeah, they're still going. And this is still leaf switches, so.
Because the thing is, it's not that they go over time through natural degradation. The only reason those ones go is through people hammering them over time. And let's face it, who hasn't done that?
Quite. One thing I should mention about this is that this machine was developed primarily by Commodore UK in a lot of ways, in association with Psygnosis.
Yeah, I mean, they really worked hand in hand with the development on it.
Yeah, because they had a lot of input onto it, because they were bringing Microcosm to it.
Yeah.
And originally it was supposed to be an exclusive on it, but because this got a little bit behind schedule, and because some design changes were made, because originally this console was supposed to look a little bit different, and it was supposed to have a faster processor, and it was supposed to have 2 meg of RAM in it. Fast
money problems
and so on and so forth, and trying to hit that $299 price point for the UK launch meant that came out the window a bit, and the development team on Microcosm were a little bit disappointed in that, I think, which is why it came out on the FM Towns, it came out on here as well, and so on and so forth. But Psygnosis by that point was owned by Sony, and you can tell there's part of the development here because there's 2 chips on this motherboard that say Sony on them, which are actually the CD-ROM control logic.
Yeah.
for it. So it's basically, I've got a feeling there were certain bits of PlayStation development going on when they were doing this, because of course the original PlayStation was supposed to come out as a Nintendo SNES with a CD-ROM drive around about then.
No, yeah, Nintendo really messed up with
Yeah, on that. So yes, it's interesting.
Well done, boys. You created your own competitors.
And remember that port on the back where the FMV module one goes in?
Yep.
There was also other things that went into it, like this.
Oh, wow. This is a gorgeous piece of technology.
What this is...
You've still got the original floppy. Oh, fantastic.
Now this plugs into the back, and you can actually put the FMV module still on it, and it just literally plugs in there. And what it did do is it gave you all the missing ports off an Amiga. So you have keyboard port, serial port, a floppy drive port, parallel port, hard drive connector. So you have an external hard drive, an RGB port. You could actually put a hard drive inside as well. An IDE drive could go inside it. Yeah. Oh, yes, of course I did.
Yeah, of course.
Duh. And
how massive a hard drive did you put in that?
Oh, I think it was about 120 megabytes. Shocking. But there was actually alternative versions of this that fitted all the way in if you didn't want the FMV card. Which had things like,
I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah, which had things like a faster processor and RAM and so on and so forth, because you could boost them up to basically the same level as an A4000 for technology-wise.
Yeah, somebody told me that, but I was always thinking, why would you ever need to?
Well, yes.
No, don't get me wrong, great project for a geek. Oh, I wonder what I can...
I mean, at one point they were talking about PowerPC accelerators for this thing, which would have meant that Wipeout...
Nobody would have ever made a motherboard to
but Wipeout 2097 that was released on the Amiga for PowerPC, that would have been quite fun if that ran in it, wouldn't it? In a lot of ways.
That would have been a good toy.
So, basically, another missed opportunity. All Commodore really needed to do was have the money to invest in software development with some other third-party guys, and maybe even do something internally, guys, and they would have had a hit on their hands. As it was, with Commodore going into bankruptcy in April 1994 and not coming out of it until sort of April 1995 and being sold to S-Com, of all people, who then went bankrupt themselves a year later. By that point, PlayStation was out.
Yeah. Well,
massive shame.
Yeah, so basically, if anybody doesn't have one of these, they're great machines. You can pick them up cheap. They still work. Although the controllers,
there are places making adapted controllers off PlayStations and things now.
So the controllers are gettable, but the machines, most of them are still running. The only design flaw is, as we said, the back hinge, but a book sorts that out. They're great fun, and for the cost of one of these that's in good condition, you're still only talking a high-end X-Bone game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not...
I mean, there are still brand new ones kicking around in places for about
they keep finding the darn things.
Yeah, same with A1200s. A1200s keep turning up occasionally.
Yeah.
Still in blocks. But one of the really cool things is that companies like Team 17 have actually released the CD-ROM images as legal free download, so you can burn it to a disk yourself,
burn your own,
which is great, and you can still get the bootstrap code and make your own ones. So that's pretty cool.
So in summation, great bit of kit,
and something fun to mess around with. So I think that wraps it up.
Yeah, I think it does.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget you can subscribe to us here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. And you might want to check out the website as well, because we'll probably have some very nice photos of things on there from this.
Okay, thank you and good night.
Bye.